Peace with each other. Peace with each other. I want to go live. Want to go in live tonight, man. I've been studying, yo. I got the new Christopher Eric book. Y'all already know what it is. Hold on. What's good with it, family? Peace with each other. Hold on. On this other. Good with it, Metro. It's good with it, Lamar Pope. Welcome to the Al Jaheed's podcast with your boy Gullah Jabiri in the building. I want to discuss a few things about I read the chapter in the Christopher Eric's new book, Ancient African History, Global History to 300 BC. To 300 CE. I also got this book too, African Civilizations, the first book. You know, in this new book is kind of sort of an add-on to the 2016 book. I really wanted to get into it about the foundation of Egypt. Who are the Nubian, or I'm even gonna say the Nubian. I'm gonna say who are the A group culture through the C group culture. Basically, mostly I'm gonna go into the language family that they probably spoke, because you got a lot of different opposing debates on what actual language family that the A group spoke or the C group spoke, what ethnic group these people were. You got some scholars solely going up on them being Nilo-Saharan, like you got Claude really, he has his model where he say that they are Nilo-Saharan speakers, mostly the Nora, something that would be closely related to the Nora and the Kanuma languages, in the Nabin languages, but he still also still consider somewhat, it was some type of Cushitic languages too there. That's still an African language, the Cushitic languages of the Red Sea Hills, so what Christopher Eric talk about. But I even read Christopher Eric book, chapter 5, the Afrocentricity of Egypt. And he talk about, the deep history, where he break down, from the Afroasiatic origins, from the language families coming from the foothills of Ethiopia, somewhere around like the northern highlands. You know what I'm saying? They were in the northern, specifically in the northern highlands of Ethiopia, somewhere around, even stretching into the southern Red Sea hills. Going to the Red Sea Hill area, traveling back and forth to those zones, as well as, 20,000 years ago, these populations been, back migrating and trading and mixing with basal raisins. And some of these basal raisins, they've been in Africa so long that they became indigenous, the indigenous Africans anyway. They already been a step right outside of Africa in the first place. People been going back and forth for a long time, especially in them regions. Like, they didn't know what, they was in the continent. They just, moving with the animals, moving with the seasons. And I'm going to Christopher Eric going to, let me show y'all something. Let me show y'all the language family, Afroasiatic. So that's the actual language that, Egyptian belonged to. Even though Egyptian had other, language language that's borrowed from the surrounding areas. There's some stuff in this Christopher Everett book that I think he should have added on to myself that he could, he probably could still consider because there's still some new ideas out there that still just bubble like the Julian Cooper theory that the lower Nubians, lower people of Sudan, they mostly spoke Cushitic languages in their region. And then we get to southern, upper Nubia, they spoke more Nilotic languages. Or the lower, or like what I think too. I think in the lower areas, you had Cushitic speakers, but you had Pacific Cushitic speakers. You already had like even Christopher Everett say, starting around the beginning of the Heliocene, Proto-Cushitic, and Nilo-Saharan groups, produce cattle, produce cattle forming at the same time period. So let me show you this book right here. On the civilization of Africa. So where he talk about the Cushitic populations. Uh, right after the yeah, right here. Yeah, right here. Where you say, here's ever say the climatic transformation. Let me see the climatic transformation of the 10th and 9th millennium BCE affected the Erythrid people of the Afro-Asian civilization. And the Erythrid people or the people of the people of the Red Sea, the people that, the Proto-Cushitic people, what I'm saying, the people that became the Proto-Cushitic people and people became the Northern Erythric people, which is the languages like the Amazigh, the Proto-Chadic, the Proto-Egyptian languages, and the Proto-Semitic language. Y'all came out of that Erythric, what I'm saying, like, it's a peoples of the Afrasian civilization, both similarly and differently than it did the descendants of the North Sudanians, so who the Nilotic, Northern Nilotic population, who also were ancestors of the modern day Nubian speakers, those Nilotic languages. The Eritreites had then had then it I mean had already diverted well before 9500 BCE into a number of distinct societies. The Southern Eritrean Society, the Proto-Cushites of the Southern Red Sea Hills, contributed along with neighboring northern Sudanians, some of the Nilotic populations, to the process of cattle domestication in the Eastern Sahara in the 9th and 8th millennium BCE. Different sources of change proceeded among those northern Erythrite peoples who cultural bearers had brought the Afrasian wild grain collecting economy northward from the southern Red Sea hills to Egypt around 15,000 BCE during the 10th millennium BCE, communities speaking the Proto-Chadic Amazigh languages. They're talking about the other language that split from the Cushitic languages that were going west. And he talk all about this too in the new book too. All the stuff he say the same stuff in the newer book. Even right, let me see. Yeah, where he said he talking about how the Bija, how the onset of the Cushitic peoples of northern Kushite long continued into habitat the original Cushitic lands of the southern Red Sea Hills. Their descendants in later historical periods include the Magi of ancient Egypt and records and the Magi people of more recent times. Even right here, even say how the Cushitic how the Cushitic populations were also influenced by Nilotic populations. So, what I'm saying? So a lot of the C group and A group keep people, even though they could have been ethnically Cushitic, there could have been a nice amount of Nilotic, presence there too, because they was influenced, even when their religion had changed. Even I hear it say the history of these southern Eritreites, talk about Cushitic populations, provides an intriguing example of the spread of religion without the existence of either missionaries or religious writings. The religious beliefs of the Proto-Cushitic, probably as early as the 8th millennium BCE, came to blend two distinct religious traditions: the Cushitic clan system with its clan priest chiefs, the Wapir, which derived from the ancient Afrasian cultural roots. That's the Wapir. That's like a cultural chief priest that you find in a lot of Afroasiatic cultures. So that's the basis of it. The Afrasian cultural roots persisted as the basis of the social loyalty and the cooperation among Proto-Cushites. But the belief in the clan deity lost its salience in its place, and no doubt as a result of the association with their neighboring northern Sudanic peoples surrounding the first eras of cattle raising in the 9th and 7th millennium. The early Kushites adopted Cushitic. The early Kushites adopted Sudanic concept of divinity. They created their own words for the new concept. See, even with that divinity, they talk about the sacral kingship. How they was burying, the chieftains with, with servants and all that stuff. That come with the Nilo-Saharan tradition, into these Cushitic populations. That's why I believe, to my stance, I think the A group and the C group people would have been Cushitic people, but still had a Nilotic, heavy Nilotic influence. That would have been related to the Nora, language groups and the Kanuma, and also the Naban, languages. I just think that, these languages probably a lot of these Cushitic languages that was in lower Nubia most likely died out or got overlapped by, incoming Nilotic speakers over time. See right here, you say they created their own, so their words, new concept of spirit, and example, expanding the meaning of old Cushitic root word for sky, waka, and include both sky, and divinity. The Wapara still had religious duties, but these duties came to redirect towards divinity. The Kushites retained the old Afrasian practice of attributing bad happenings to dangerous spirits, although they now sometimes also view evil as divine attribution, retribution. Something else too. People popping fireworks. It is 4th of July, y'all. And too, they were saying like how the Cushitic population brought in the goats. You know, even after Playa had goats. You know what I'm saying? They most likely got these goats trading with, trading with Cushitic population. What I mean by Cushitic, I'm not talking about Cushitic with a K. Cushitic with a K would be the Kermit population. Those actually would be Nilo-Saharan speakers. But I'm talking about Cushitic populations, like people that'll be a good example, like the Somali people, like the Habesha people, or the Aga people of, Northern Highlands, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, the Tigray, even though them languages are Ethio-Semitic languages, but they were actually from like a mixture of Cushitic language that mixed with Semitic language. And like people like the Afar, the Bija, different people of that nature. The Romo would be a Cushitic, those are Cushitic languages. You got different Cushitic languages that's all throughout Kenya. Like those are the southern Cushitic languages all throughout Kenya and Tanzania. Those are considered the southern Cushitic language branches. Yeah, well, some area how they, and also the Cushitic people also would have been the ones who domesticated the donkey too. You do find donkeys all throughout, even through the Nilotic lands too, what Christopher Eric talk about in his book. It's no book. Yeah, he talk about in his new book. When he talk about Bruce Williams. Bruce Williams, his work been added on to. It'd have been nice if Christopher Everett could say looking at Maria Gatto works. He went straight to Bruce Williams, and Bruce Williams' works actually been added on to. So he kind of used somewhat outdated work, because they're not really saying that the Skahul was a state itself, but it was part of something much bigger, so they actually added on to Bruce Williams' work. I hear you say Bruce Williams first began to turn the spotlight on this polity in his work. Because whenever you think of the Kustul finds, we're talking about the A group. Talking about the what they call the Nubian A group, called the Nubian A group. You just call it the A group. I just call it the A group culture. Bruce Williams first began to turn a spotlight on this polity in his work 4 decades ago, including among the materials found as Kustul were particular documents depicting victorious incursions by Skaskud forces onto Upper Egypt. Williams' findings faced opposition at the time because of the long-held assumption of ancient Egypt as being somehow in but not in Africa. But as a more recent work has revealed that the Sahel state, if anything, was even more influential than Williams first proposed. As I say, a lot of his work was added on to. And even they even get more into detail on who they are now too. You know what I'm saying? Like Christopher Everett right here, he's still using some of the older work. From the remains at this site, at sites in what is today the Western Desert, as well as, and he had like what he called, what I say, the Middle Nile. Let me show you something. Like what I say, and I be saying it's the Middle Nile region where the Pharaonic culture started. Now the cultures, you have multiple cultures, but I'm saying like the Pharaonic culture, you know what I'm saying, that particular, you know what I'm saying, political regime or kingship style, you know what I'm saying, was fastened by this multicultural region here, where these different cultures met up. You had different Nilo-Saharan cultures, you know what I'm saying? That's where the sacred kingship come from. A lot of the religious, some of the religious attributes come from. Then you had a lot of Cushitic, you know what I'm saying, culture here. Then you had a lot of Naqada culture up in the north, you know what I'm saying, who met up here too, who were the, you know what I'm saying, northern, you know what I'm saying, more northern Afrasian populations. What Christopher Ehret in this book called the Proto-North Eritrea populations were the future Egyptians would have came from in the first place. He even call them the northern Eritrea because they came from the Red Sea regions. Here, let me show you. Before they even came to the Tata and all that, there was the Fan and the Kadan culture. You see here. The third Afrasian diversion, Proto-North Eritrea. You know what I'm saying? This is the like when they came here, these are the people that would have started becoming the North, you know what I'm saying, the Egyptian language, Semitic, the Chadic and the Amazigh, and they would have intermixed with some of these ancient North African people that was already here. Christopher Everett even mentioned that in his book too. He even mentioned like these people, you know what I'm saying, uh, because of the DNA marker. You see it right here. We even say it right here. Moreover, the available genetic advances relating in the particular to M35 and 215 Y chromosome, and this would be the same. This is the same thing as E3B. You know what I'm saying? Y haplogroup E3B lineage also accords with just this kind of demographic history. This lineage had its origins broadly in the Horn of Africa and East Africa. It then spread to Egypt in the eras before forming. From there to the areas of the Levant where the pre-Proto-Semitic branch of Afrasian family was spoken, and also to North Africa and the Sahara, where it is common among Amazigh speakers in those regions. Distribution partially parallels, in other words, the history of the spread of Afrasian language family as described here, origins in the Horn, a movement of people northward to Egypt, bringing a new demic component of Horn Africa origin into existing populations of the 17,000 years ago, with the subsequent spread of Afrasian speakers to the Levant and across North and Saharan Africa, bringing the Y chromosome lineage to existing populations of those regions. Who you think he talked about the existing populations in those northern regions that were there already? Some of them basal Eurasian population, like the Iberian Marusians, some of them ancient North African populations that's all been there and adapted to those regions. When I read this part right here, what's good with it, fam? I ain't even see y'all in the building. What's good with it? I want to show this. Christopher Everett, what did he talk about? He talked about when he was saying that the Nilo, like the Skahoo was just the Nilo-Saharan. Uh, Saudi border. We're going to the beginning where he talked about we talk about the not so deep history of Egypt. Foundation 6,000 and 3100 BCE. You say, and then there is the not so deep history in this period, 6,000 to 3100 BCE, the span of lands extending across the region of modern day Sudan, Nubia, and Upper and Middle Egypt, entered into a major era of cultural reformation. To relate this history, I need to introduce a particular concept, the concept of cultural area. Anthropologists, as they build their discipline in the 19th century, encountered regions in which people of different historical origins had come to be involved for centuries in extensive cross-cultural encounters with each other. Because of their long histories of cultural interchange, the societies of such regions, despite their desperate despite their desperate earlier origins, often had come to share many features of cultures with each other, and not just superficial features. They formed an interactive region of cultural interchange and cultural commonality. So you had these different cultures meeting up and, fastening together, particularly, the Naqada culture and the A group culture. Just two different distinct cultures, according to Maria Gatto. You see right here, that's what I was talking about right here. He said, when he said a recent archaeology revealed that the 600 BCE onward, the people of these lands came to share much more than just a common economy, also participated as use Windrow entails expression in a long-term history of cultural convergence with a body of common cultural ideas and ritual practices taking hold from south of the Nile confluence region northward into the later founding regions of Old Kingdom Egypt, as far north as the latitude of Aswan. The participants in this history of cultural interaction would have spoken languages of Eastern Sahelian, also called Eastern Sudanic, a branch of Nilo-Saharan, from the Aswan to Abadori in Middle Egypt. They spoke dialects of a language that would evolve into ancient Egypt. I agree with that. But I think what also would have been missing is the Cushitic languages too, along with the Nilo-Saharan languages and the Middle Egyptian language. Because even you even find today that like some of the Naban languages and a lot of Nilotic languages have Cushitic borrowwords in it. And I showed that earlier when I read the Eric when he was talking about how the Cushitic population, even absorbed some of the Nilotic religion. I'm sure, hold on. Let me share my screen too. Let me see what's going on in the chat. I'm gonna show some more sources too on this argument about this, who are the Skahul people. We know the Skahul people was the A group Nubians or the A group culture. Let me just say the A group culture because they wouldn't call themselves Nubians then. Just say the A group culture. That's what a lot of people saying more anyway. They're not really calling them A group Nubians. They're saying A group culture. They're saying the Nubian because based on the region. Yeah, some Iberian Mauritians did have that mixture in them. That wasn't overall. That's because you had some of them Kefians and the Monenian people that was in the Sahara too. But Iberian Mauritians, they were ancient. There was a mixture of ancient North Africa, some of the Afroasiatics that migrated into North Africa around 16,000 to 15,000 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Them already being mixed with a Southern Arabian Vidoid type basal Eurasian anyway, as they migrated up, mixed with them Iberian Mauritians of the East. You had Eastern Iberian Mauritians too. They call them Eastern Oranian. But the ones in the West had a lot of more, Kefian who are Nilotic like and Onanian who are more the Proto-Niger Congo related. And they already would have been Hadza-like anyway, because Proto-Nilotic would have already been Hadza-like anyway. They would have all branched off from a Hadza-like, hunter-gatherer type people in East Africa somewhere around 50,000 years ago. I'm going to let me show you. Hold on, let me show y'all. Let me share my screen real quick. See, let me get my source ready. I'm going to Lower Nubia. Let me show y'all what I'm talking about. Because it's sort of like a little mini debate you know what I'm saying, scholars, they have their own models, different, languages, they have their own model, what they talk about, what the A group and the C group populations, what they would have spoke. We do know the Naqada population, like Christopher Ayres say, was a North Eritrea population. But the A group people, they either could have been fully a Nilo Nora type, but we even know today the Nora population that they say could have been related to the Nora population, they have a deep relationship with the Cushitic populations around them. They even mix with a lot of the Cushitic population and they marry with these other groups around them. So they got a lot of words and borrowed words around them because we could have been just Nilo-Saharan people that live in close proximity with the Cushitic populations as well. Because they was heavy in the northern regions. Show you something. Show my screen real quick. James and I steady to my Neanderthal. I heard you talking about Neanderthals too earlier, James. And James, the Papua New Guineans, they got Denisovan and Neanderthal DNA too. They got both. Y'all see my screen? Everybody can see my screen? Let me make sure I was still off mute. Okay. Okay, Lower Nubia. Lower Nubia is Northern Sudan. Even right here it say, because we all, we talking about Skahood, you know what I'm saying? Like even with Christopher Ayres in the book, he said Skahood, they probably would have spoke more Nilo-Saharan language or Northern Sudanic language. But I believe they would have been Cushitic population who were heavily influenced by North Sudanians. He already even Ayres even himself, he said the certain Cushitic, you know what I'm saying, even their religion, especially the northern Cushitic populations, that had a lot of melodic, you know what I'm saying, influence. Even in the DNA, you can find a lot of melodic, you know what I'm saying, contemporary melodic signatures and contemporary Cushitic populations even today. Even though they still have the they're already indigenous Afrasian component, which would be the Armadic component, which they all would have. Even here it say the intensive archaeological work conducted prior to the flooding means that the history of the area is much better known than that of Upper Nubia. According to David Windrow, you know what I'm saying, Eric just mentioned this dude in the book. The A group Nubian polity of the late 4th millennium BCE is poorly understood since most of the archaeological remains are submerged underneath the Lake Nasir. So a lot of it, that's why it's a lot of debate and a lot of speculation when it comes to the Lower Nubians. Like even when I'm gonna show you too, when Clyde really, you know what I'm saying, which is a linguist, and he's a linguist. I think he's a paleontologist too. Let me look him up. Clyde really, yeah, Clyde really, yeah, he's an Egyptologist. He's a French linguist, Egyptologist, archaeologist, and he primarily specialized in Meroitic in the Nilo-Saharan languages. His model, he said that the C group and the A group populations would have been a Nabin, related to a Nabin type language, which would be also been related to some type of language of Nora, with some, Cushitic borrowers in it. And then you got other scholars that say it actually was just a Cushitic languages in that area mostly. And they were super influenced by Nilotic populations gradually over time. I go with both. I think they were Cushitic languages heavily in Lower Nubia, especially coming in from the Red Sea Hills. But I also think, they met up with Nilo-Saharan population. It's been like that for years, since the beginning of the Heliocene. These people domesticated cows around about the same time period. See, like I'm gonna find that part in this other area book where they even say they started domesticating cows around the same time period. Gotta find that. Yeah, I gotta find that part where they say that. Yeah, right here. I found it right here. Let me get back to that. Hold on, let me show y'all. I found it right here. It's in the African civilizations book. It say in the southern Red Sea Hills, the linguistic evidence support that the proposal that the Proto-Kushites of the ninth and the 8th millennium BCE were taking up cattle raising in broadly the same time range as their North Sudanian neighbors. Unfortunately, we lack any archaeological evidence for this era in the key parts of this region, so testing this evidence is in the archaeological remains an urgent topic for the future research. So that's like, what I'm saying, it's still up for grabs. That's why a lot of, uh, even Clyde Ridley in some of his paperwork, he say that it's still speculative, but he still, it still could be considered. It's not off the table. I'm gonna show y'all that. I'm gonna show y'all that too. Let me show my screen again. Okay, get back to this Lower Nubia. Now I'm gonna show y'all this where it say language, right? And I already got a lot of the sources from this port. Actually had the real sources. And they say language. Linguistic evidence indicates, what this dude say? Said, do I agree to forming? No, well, you had forming beginnings, like the grain collecting, the technique, but then, I'm saying, consistent agriculture started in the Levant, but you had agriculture starting in different areas independently too at the same time. But like for wheat and barley, grains and stuff like that. He said no wiki. Okay. But I got the real sources to this too. But it say linguistic evidence indicate that Cushitic languages were spoken in Lower Nubia, in the ancient region which straddles present-day southern Egypt, and part of northern Sudan, and that the Nilo-Saharan languages were spoken in Upper Nubia to the south by the peoples of Kerma culture, with northeastern Sudanic languages from Upper Nubia later replacing Cushitic languages of Lower Nubia. You had different Cushitic languages up there too, because they even say the C group language, like it wouldn't even been, it would have been a language related to the Beja language, but like was part of another Cushitic, branch, but not specifically Beja itself, but closely related. It could have been a language that would have been related to the Eastern Cushitic languages before, migrated south too. Like either the Highland Eastern or the Lowland Eastern Cushitic languages possibly. And also even the Kerma language itself could have had some borrowed words from the Aga people, which could have been the Gash group. Because that's one other thing that I disagree with Clyde really on. He said the Gash group were the ancestor of the Nora or the Nora population. So he think that the Gash group probably would have spoken Nilo-Saharan too. I think no, but most other scholars say the Gash group spoke a Cushitic language and would have related to those Eastern Cushitic populations in the East, like the Aga or even some of the Proto-Somali language, like the ancestor of the Somali language, which would have been like the Eastern Cushitic branches when they were further up north before the modern day Somalians and the other Eastern Cushitic branches like the Romo or Conso, migrated, to the south, to the southern part of the Horn. And right here it say Julian Cooper 2017. That's the article. Julian Cooper make a lot of sense in his premise of this. Julian Cooper states that in antiquity, Cushitic languages were spoken in Lower Nubia, the northern most part of modern day Sudan. In antiquity, Afroasiatic languages in Sudan belong chiefly to the phylum known as Cushitic, spoken on the eastern seaboard of Africa and from the Sudan to Kenya, including Ethiopian highland. You're talking about all, the whole Cushitic family. And they say Julian Cooper also state that Eastern Sudanic, which is a Nilo-Saharan language speaking populations from the southern to western Nubia gradually replace earlier Cushitic speaking populations of this region. And I go with that theory. It makes more sense to me. He said before coming back down to mix with them. Yeah, they did mix with some Amadic populations. Even Christopher Eric mentioned it in his book, in both of his books. But what I'm saying is too that in his book he say that that the school stool population, we know they A group. Christopher Eric going with the notion that they were, not mostly Nilo-Saharan population. I say that they were of course, they were some Nilo-Saharan population there, but these were Nilo-Saharan populations who overlapped Cushitic populations that was already in that region. And Beja now is the only, language that's left, in those regions, which is that northern Cushitic branch. I think it was other northern Cushitic branches too. They got overlapped by northeastern Sudanic languages, which is part of the Nilo-Saharan branch, or the most northern Nilo-Saharan branch of those regions. And it got overlapped. That's why you can find certain Cushitic words in the Nubian language. I think Clyde really he kind of downplaying it a little bit, because other scholars bring forth information of certain words, and he just talking about some. It's come from natural comparison. Like they just come up like these words know, don't have this, like, it's not a coincidence that these words, you know what I'm saying, are so similar. I'm gonna show you that too. I'm gonna show you this Julian Cooper article too. I have the whole article. I mean the whole journal, I mean. Let's say Julian Cooper also state, that the Eastern Sudanic languages speak populations of the southern and western Nubia gradually replaced the early Cushitic speaking population. See, that's why I like the Julian Cooper thesis, because even though he say, some of them spoke, Cushitic languages in Lower Nubia, he doesn't outweigh the Nilo-Saharan presence that was there either. You know what I'm saying? A lot like Claude really, he actually fought against, because you had other scholars that were saying all the damn languages was Cushitic, like the Kerma languages and all that. And that wasn't true. So of course, you had some Nilo language down there, because when you're going into those regions, you kind of like going into the heartland of the Nilo-Saharians, especially like in the the southwest regions. And then you go into the borderland where they meet up with these Cushitic populations. Right here say, in the lower Nubia there was an Afro-Asiatic language, likely a branch of Cushitic. By the end of the first millennium BCE, this region had been encroached upon and replaced by Eastern Sudanic speakers arriving from the south and west, to be identified first with Meroitic and later migrations attributes to Nubian speakers. In the Handbook of Nubia, Clyde Riley, 2019, states that the Cushitic languages once dominated Lower Nubia along with the African Egyptian language. Really, 2019 states. Two Afro-Asiatic languages were present in antiquity in Nubia, namely the Egyptian and the Cushitic. Because the Egyptian would have been the Naqada language, the language of the people of Naqada, the northern Eritreic language. And, the Cushitic would have been the southern Eritreic language, or the southern Red Sea Hill, and the central Red Sea Hill. And say really, 2019 mentions historical records of powerful Cushitic speaking race which controlled Lower Nubia and some cities of Upper Egypt. Really, that's Clyde Really, 2019. That's in that book though. Earlier, he had different ideas. Even in the other Oxford handbook, like this handbook, this handbook of Nubia, not the Oxford handbook. It's another one. It's two different handbooks. The languages of ancient Nubia, handbook of ancient Nubia. The other one, the Oxford handbook, I got the Oxford handbook, and there he's saying that some scholars say that, but he said that the evidence is weak, because they do have scanty evidence on it, because only reason they had that scanty evidence really on it because the areas of those C group regions, Skastul and all those regions is fucking underwater. It's like, it's flooded by the Nasir Lake. All that stuff is underwater from a man-made lake. So it's like, it's all up for grabs. Even right here it say, from the end of the 4th century until the 6th century, they held part of Lower Nubia, some cities up in Egypt. You say he mentions the linguistic relationship between the Beja language and the ancient Cushitic Belimi language, which dominate Lower Nubia, and that the Belimis can be regarded as a particular tribe of Magi. And then too, a lot of African groups are bilingual. So some of these, even though a lot of these dudes were, could have been, ethnically Cushitic, from a personal level, they still could have spoken Nilo-Saharan languages, and, being bilingual in that region. And then likewise, some of the Nilo-Saharans probably could have spoken Cushitic language. And it say in Upper Egypt, the northern lower Nubia was present, a series of cultures of Badorian, Atorian, Gazarian, A group and B group, C group. Linguistic evidence indicates that the Cushitic languages were spoken in Lower Nubia, an ancient region which straddles present-day southern Egypt and northern Sudan before the arrival of northern eastern Sudanic languages in the Middle Nile Valley. And those languages would have been, Nilo-Saharan language. I even go here, what if I go to, I type in A group, right? The A group or the Skahoo people. The A group culture would have been the ancestors of the C group culture. The C group culture is nothing more than the decline version of the A group culture. You see the blacktop pottery. And the blacktop pottery is specifically the A group culture. That's their pottery. And the wave line pottery would have been like that's a Nilo-Saharan signature pottery. But I think the burnished, red and black pottery, the A group pottery would have been a Cushitic based pottery, but still has some influence from the Nilo-Saharans as well. But you do find like differences, like when they start to hibernate, find certain designs in it and things like that, even within the burnished pottery. But I think the basis of the pottery come from a Cushitic and Nilo, hibernization background, but mostly from a Cushitic background from those lower Nubia regions or lower Sudan. Right here it say A group makers left behind numbers of cemeteries with each micropolis containing around 50 graves. Most of what known about the culture has been gleaned from these tombs. 3,000 of each have been excavated, burying for two kinds of more common oval pit and similar pit little skeeches. Oh yeah, right here it says specimens typically had straight hair or black or brown hue. See, that's basically like that describes Cushitic population or a lot of Nilotic, because she had some Nilotic population that they've been mixing with Cushitic in North Euretric populations so long that they started adapt their features as well. Like the Nora, like I was talking about the Nora population in Eritrea. They Nilo-Saharan speakers, but some of them still have characteristics and features and traits like their Cushitic neighbors or Afroasiatic speaking neighbors, and the Kanuma. And then you got the Tibu people of southern Libya, where they look like, they have a mixture type of look, even though they speak Nilo-Saharan languages, which is their nucleus culture. Let me see. Even here it say dental trait analysis, A group fossils found affinities with populations inhabiting Northeast Africa and the Nile Valley and East Africa among sampled populations. The A group people were nearest to Kerma culture bearers and Kush populations in Upper Nubia and to Ethiopians. There's more Ethiopian people at the home, like Habesha people, followed by Meroeg X group and Christian period. But even like a lot of these Nilos, even a lot of these people spoke Nilotic languages and had Cushitic features. You know what I'm saying? That's because a lot of the people was up north for so long. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of these Nilo-Saharians that they started to add mix and started to have the features of their neighbors too as well. because even the Kerma group themselves, you know what I'm saying? Like, let me show you here the Kerma group. Even though the Kerma group, we know the Kerma group with non-Saharian speakers. You might hear it say, according to he suggests evidence indicate the Kerma people spoke Afro-Asiatic. They got debunked. You know what I'm saying? Really debunked them. But really, he'll go overboard with the knowledge of Harry himself, though. Even though he know, like he said that they said the Kerma people spoke Cushitic, you know what I'm saying? But no, the Kerma people spoke in Naladic. They propose that the knowledge of Harry and Nabin today contains a number of key passive loan words that are Proto-Highland East Cushitic origin, including the term sheep, goat skin. You know what I'm saying? They argue that this term suggests that the Kerma population, which along with the C group inhabit the Nile Valley immediately before the arrival of the Nubian speakers, spoke Afro-Asiatic languages. And then Clyde really, on the other hand, suggests that the Kerma people spoke Nilo-Saharan languages of the Eastern Sudanic branch, mostly ancestral to the later Mehreg language, which also suggests was Nilo-Saharan. Really also criticized proposal by Behrens and Bacchus Gerst of a significant early Afro-Asiatic influence of Nabin and considered evidence of subtrail influence on the Nabin from an earlier, now extinct Eastern Sudanic language to be stronger. And here my boy Julian Cooper, my boy Julian Cooper, I got his paper, I got his work. He say also, Julian Cooper also suggests that Nilo-Saharan languages of Eastern Sudanic branch were spoken by people of Kerma as well as those further south along the Nile to the west and those of Said in the island of North Kerma. But that Afro-Asiatic, mostly Cushitic languages were spoken by other peoples of Lower Nubia, such as the Magi and the C group culture living in Nubian regions, north side towards Egypt, and those southeast of the Nile and Punt in the Eastern Desert, based partially on analysis and phonology of place names. He used the topography, the toponyms, you know what I'm saying, place names, because a lot of the areas in lower Nubia, even in our history, when we say Wawet and all them little areas, those are Cushitic names, like Bija type names, related to the Bija language. Not specifically Bija, but could be Bija related, because a lot of similar terms and words, to those to that language. And they say right here, say based partially on analysis of phonology and place names and personal names from relevant regions perceived in ancient texts. He argued that the terms from Kush and Irene, ancient names of Kerma in the region south of it, respectively, in Egypt texts display traits typically of Eastern Sudanic languages, while those from further north in Lower Nubia and east are more typically of Afrasian family noted. The Irene list also provides a similar inventory of Kush, placing this formally in an Eastern Sudanic zone. These Irene Kush lists are distinctive from the Wawet, Magi, Punt, and Watanet list, which provides sounds typical of Afroasiatic languages. And then Cooper, 2017-2020, suggests that an Eastern Sudanic language, perhaps early Mehreg, was spoken in Kerma by at least 18,000 BCE, the time from which toponymic what they say toponymic evidence is available. Those arrival of that new ethno-linguistic group around that time may perhaps be indicated by a change in place names for Upper Nubia used in Egyptian excretion text. However, Cooper also proposed that similar Eastern Cushitic languages may have been already spoken in Upper Nubia, both at Kerma and the Sai Polity to its north. Earlier by the Kerma Moine, which began around 2050 2050 BCE, while north of Sai and Lower Nubia, Cushitic languages were spoken and much later replaced by Mehreg and possessed by early Mehreg spread, displacing Eastern Cushitic and Cushitic languages along the Nile. Yeah, because the Kerma languages, the Mehreg languages would have been an offshoot of the Kerma languages. Okay, let me show y'all this too. That's the Kerma culture. Oh yeah, I'll show you the Kerma culture too. It has something to do with the Gash group. Like some stuff with clarity I agree upon, some stuff like I don't agree upon. Like for us, the language family. Like I think the Lower Nubian spoke, was a Cushitic people, but they had deep, Nilo-Saharan connections in the marriages with these people because they lived in the same regions. He even say that to an extent too. He even say like, I'll show y'all too, where he say, even though it's scanty evidence. Yeah, the evidence, even the evidence, even though it's a little scanty, like that they have some type of Cushitic borrowed words and phrases. I heard it say the Gash group, a Neolithic culture that flourished from 3,000 to 18,000 BCE in Eritrea, Eastern Sudan, had contacts with the Kerma during the whole period of its development. Kerma elements occur along the whole stratigraph sequence of Mao Teklignos, the main sites of Gash group. They said, the Gash group people were, Afro-Asiatic speakers. Gash group, right here say, it has been suggested that the Gash group was Punt, or at least part of it. The Egyptian pottery found a remarkably different of those found in Kerma trade route. Reed shells were often used in personal adornments, adornishing close counts and Red Sea. They was like more to the east. They could have been Aga people too. Like, you know what I'm saying, those Eritrean areas. That could have been, who the people of Punt was anyway. People of Aga, different different Aga people, or people of, when I say Aga, those are people like those are Central Cushitic speakers. And they could have also been, some Eastern Cushitic speakers too. Some of the ancestors of the modern day Somalians and some of the Habesha populations. I want to go back to here to the A group too and show y'all the debate that's going on between the different scholars as well. I heard it say debate about the origins of the first pharaohs, and this is out of the Oxford Handbook of Nubia. This I got this source too. I heard it say in the 1980. See, so I told y'all Eric, he used the Bruce Williams source, but he didn't use the updated Bruce Williams source. What they debating about? And they say in 1980, archaeologist Bruce Williams conducted an excavation titled "The Lost Pharaohs of Nubia," arguing that the Egyptian pharaonic monarchy was situated in Nubia rather than Egypt during the times of the A group. He based his discovery at Skahul Cemetery on Skustu Cemetery on 3 archaeological finds and sites of the tombs. Their Paltheria of contents and royal iconography, such as pottery, vessels, and stone censers, which claims, however, lead to the criticism and defense from scholars such as William Y. Adams and Maria Carmela Gatto, respectively. Gatto argued that Bruce Williams explicitly denied making such a sweeping claim, saying that he was only trying to raise the strong possibility that Egyptians' founding dynasty originated near Skustu and that the unification was accomplished from Nubia. Gatto added that whatever the claim, the for some scholars conceivable idea of primary role for Nubia in the rise of Egyptian monarchy has been reconsidered after more recent finds in Upper Egypt dating back to Naqada I period, the early manifestation of elite iconography. Because in that too, what stumps that, they found an older Naqada I, like they say, what she said, from something from the Naqada I period. The Skustu culture, theirs are more recent in the Naqada III period. So the ones they found in Abydos was older. In Upper Egypt, in Ninus Skustu, and she say back to Naqada I period, the early manifestation of elite iconography, while noting that the tombs found in school are exceptionally comparable to those of the earliest Egyptian rulers' remains, nevertheless, a fact. Because they saying now that, even though that they found this older stuff in Abydos, the people of the A group culture, was its own independent, complex, kingdom in its own culture. outside of the Naqada group. And they say Adam suggests that the lower size and contents of their grave support an approach different from that of Bruce Williams. He states that the large tombs and their abundant contents may argue for a more stratified society than we had previously envisioned in the A group period, but there are not evidence for monarchical state. Adams also argues that school incense burner found in the cemetery may be better suited. Oh, my bad. Better suited to prove that the monarchy was situated somewhere near Nile Valley instead of the monarchy being initially situated in Nubia. A lot of people also to say that these two regions had its own independent, own independent statehood and stuff like that. That's what Maria Gatto, that's what she presents. So this I also got that's what I was saying. So I think the C group culture and the A group culture, they were Cushitic populations, but had heavy influence from Nilotic populations as well. Let me show you. Let's see some. My documents. Yeah, it's right here. This the Oxford Handbook of Nubia, and then here they got the Clyde really statement where he write about languages in the area. Where to go? Got a whole section in here. Maria Gatto do too. Here you go. Language and writing in the Kingdom of Meroe. Because of the what by them saying that the Cushitic element to the lower Nubia areas is so new, what I'm saying, that the evidence is sort of kind of weak because all the evidence is sort of kind of weak now too. Because it's an overview, it's a broad view because of the area where they trying to excavate, they really can't even excavate no more because it's covered in a damn lake. They have to go under the damn Nasir Lake. Even in here, he talk about the Cushitic languages and writing in the Kingdom of Meroe, Clyde really. Language situation in ancient Sudan. You talking about the Egyptian language, Egyptian Afroasiatic phylum, also called Hemio-Semitic, is divided into 6 branches: Ancient Egyptian, Semitic, Berber, Cushitic, Amadic, and Chadic. Ancient Egyptian was, of course, a language of administration in Nubia during the Egyptian colonization until it came to an end. It kept later a particular status as only written language during the kingdom of Napata. They're talking about during the Kerma period when Egypt took over. These in later periods. It's not the A group, period. talking about Cushitic languages, how Berber and Belimes, some of the old, like the only, Cushitic languages left in this region. I heard it say, if difficult to decide if Belimes were one of Beja tribe or if they were a distinct group speaking a related language. Similarly, it has been assumed that the language of the A group, 3700 to 3800 BCE, and of early kingdom of Kerma, 3450 to 2150 BCE, were also Cushitic. I don't think me personally, I don't think the Kerma language was Cushitic. I think that language was mostly always Nilo-Saharan language, language families. Or so some people say you had a pre-Kerma period where you had Cushitic languages in those regions, and then you had with these Nilo populations from the eastern Sahara areas moved in east into the more to the river regions. Uh, I can go with that scenario as well, but I don't think they spoke Cushitic language all the way through, and I think that's what he's rebutting to in this statement to those other languages that thought that the Kerma language always was a Cushitic language, because you had a pre-Kerma period and then you had the Kerma period. The Kerma period was straight up Nilo-Saharan groups, coming in, dominating, coming in from the upper Nubia region. And they say this makes sense, historically, but linguistic evidence based on rare words from Egyptian sources is so weak that these assumptions remain highly speculative. And a lot of this already is speculative because, the excavations is limited from that lake. Let me show y'all some other sources in here too. Uh, got the Julian Cooper source. His sources make a lot more sense to me. You got right here. This is the Clyde Riley, some more Clyde Riley sources. He talk about the language. He believed the C group language is Nora. I mean, not Nora, but a language that would have been related to the Nora language. I heard Proto-Nubian and Nora, a direct genility compound, meaning woman, child. We talk about the C group. So we talk about the see, here we go. You heard his proposal. He say, he say two hypotheses can be put, starting right here. Where he say two hypotheses can be put forward to explain the presence of this language of the Middle Nile Valley prior to the introduction of Nubian. It could be first the last stage of the C group language, similarities between the pottery of the gas group and the Tyrian 2500 to 1500 BCE and the pottery of the C group have been noticed by Fatovich. The gas group culture has been attributed to the ancestors of Nora. I told y'all that, the gas group people were Cushitic speakers. Partially of the Nora ancestors could have been gas group people because they, from the Eritrean rare areas. But the Nora people are Nilo-Saharan speakers, and I don't think he putting it all together like that, because all scholars, you have different scholars that's gonna put it together a different way, you know what I'm saying, based on what they put together, whatever. Especially when you have scanty evidence on the region. And they say if Nora tribes actually are a remote offshoot, if the Nora tribes actually are a remote offshoot of the C group, it would account for the similarity between their present language and the pre-Nile Nubian stratum. You can't ignore, you know what I'm saying? You can't ignore that you did have some Cushitic, people in that area too, even right here. He acknowledges it a bit, but he kind of downplayed it a little bit when it comes to Clyde, really. But I think he kind of changes it. He changed this article is kind of like it's from 2000, it's probably from like 2010 or something like that. It's not his latest work. I think he kind of changes his perspective, when Julian Cooper come out with his statement on the subject. Because even in that Nubian book I showed, that's from 2020, and he wrote another statement from 2019. Even in the 2020 book, he doesn't go as hard as he did on this statement. And he say none of these arguments is sustainable. The alleged Berber loan words have already been dealt with the Bahrain's review. That's the other people that go with it mostly. The Berber loan words, they already been debunked. That the C group people, Berber speakers or whatever, or even the Berber loan word, that was debunked. A lot of the words most likely was Cushitic. And you right here, you say the list of supposed Cushitic loan words is not conclusive. I mean, it's not done. Like it's still in works. No real comparative method with reconstruction of protoforms is used. She compares each time a Nabin word with a restricted panel of Cushitic equivalent, often only one or two from Cushitic languages, varying languages each time, with the result of multiplying chance corresponds. A single example will give an idea of this method. Nabin Fudi Dung is compared with Oromo Fondo, Somali Fanta, Hadia Finda, Kumar Fandia, all meaning also dung. This set seems convincing at first glance. However, Nabin is a recent development of the earlier Star B. Moreover, Nabin never simplifies original N into, so the resemblance is probably due to chance correspondence. At all evidence cannot be considered as evidence. And then like he got another statement when he wrote about the Cushitic too. We are right here. Where he say, this sect, and we say pre-Nile Nubian stratum. This sect could be expected as more comparison between Nubian languages, but I'm not sure that the linguistic data currently available, especially for the Western Nubian languages, would allow a dramatic increase of the PNN, or the PNS. That would be the pre-Nile Nubian stratum list. Scanty as it is, scanty as it is, this list brings valuable information. Connection with the Afroasiatic languages are rare and doubtful. They might account for Nabin Fang which is goat, because we do know the Cushitic people did bring in goats, into more southern regions. And that's most likely, how, a lot of Nilo-Saharan, they even have goats because they traded with Cushitic populations. That's so they had to be there. Uh, and they say, Proto-Nubian Bell, some Cushitic parallels can be given given for Pari, Suricom, and Trizi, iron, but it is much more likely that borrowing, if any, was from pre-Nile Nubians or Nubian into Cushitic. Connections with the Cushitic for the house milk skin sword Sorn has suggested by Bilkenhurst as founding significant ground and are obviously chance correspond. I don't think that's chance correspondence. It's a I think Chad really, he's a little bit more biased towards the Nilo thing, like towards the Nilo Saharian. So he is saying like it's more Nilo, whatever. And I got another source. Here. That source was, let me show you what that source was. This was enemy brothers kinship relationship between Meroites and Nubian. That was Clyde Ridley. And another source right here. It's a good one too. This was held North Cushitic, Martin Vanvo. And he even mentions really in the introduction. He even mentioned Clyde Riley in the introduction. Right here you say the North Cushitic branch of Afro-Asiatic phylum, formerly known as Hameo-Semitic, consists only one language, Bija, name, Bajwa. You say by the Bija people, the mainly spoken in Eastern Sudan. Let me go down here where I say it is necessary to recall the question of Meroe, the language of the so-called Black Pharaohs, attested in the inscriptions of monuments along Sudanese part of the river Nile. Since the beginning of the 20th century, scholars have been discussing three possible classifications: Nilo-Saharan, Nubian, or Nora, Afroasiatic, Beja, or Amadic, or an isolated language, or an overview. See really to 2010. That's what we just reading in 2010. If Nilo-Saharan hypothesis has been favored since the second half of the 20th century, is only recently that really 2010 could prove that the comparative method that Meroe indeed belongs to Nilo-Saharan. He was right about that. It do belong to Nilo-Saharan, and more precisely to northern eastern Sudanic branch, which include also Nubian, Nora, Taman, Nubia, and not to North Cushitic. That's because some scholars were trying to say all of that was North Cushitic. But some of them languages, in Lower Nubia was North Cushitic, but they went extinct. They overlapped. The only one that's left is Beja. You did have a lot of melodic languages up there too that had to be recognized. And they said it had long been believed that Belimes already mentioned by the Egyptians. And the Belimes is like a group, kind of like a Beja type group that would have been related to some Beja. Said mentioned by Egyptians and the Greeks were the ancestors of the Bejas, but Brown could only prove recently that their language was the ancestor of the Bija language in his uh, obscure written in Latin. He shows that the beginning of the text of Blimini obscure from the Sakura. Let me go down, and let me go down to the point I want to really go down to where it say because it's the article called North Cushitic, and we go down to it say connection with Nile Saharian. The Nile Saharian would be the Nubian languages, and I was show you there had to be some type of Cushitic languages present there, especially in Lower Nubia. I say it was both. I say it was both Nile Saharian and Cushitic languages there intermingling with each other, in that particular region, along with the Naqada languages, which is with a northern Eritreic language. And it say Blazes 2014 studied the lexical borrowing between Bija and the three Nilo-Saharan languages that were in contact with it: Nilo-Nubian, Nabin, Kinzi, and Dangala varieties, Kanuma and Nara. The author, in the Kanuma and Nara, them languages I was talking about that's in Eritrea, these languages, they already live along a lot of Cushitic populations anyway. And you can see it, you can see it between they physical features too. A lot of them they look melodic, and you'll see a lot of them have a Cushitic Somalian type look to them too. And they say the author discusses the direction of 36 borrowings. It's a 36 borrowings, which consists mostly of comparison provided by Renesh. In turn, it turns out that Bija borrowing from Nilo-Saharan uh, amount to only 9 lexical items. Remember, really was just in the last order was trying to say how Bija in the Cushitic language borrowed so much from Nilo-Saharan because he was kind of biased to a Nilo-Saharan language. And he say, and right here say, Nilo-Saharan amount is only 9 lexical items plus one dubious one, 7 from Nubian, 2 from Kanuba, and 1 from Nara. The item for white was counted twice as borrowing from Nubian and from Nara. Two more loans which came ultimately from Egyptian via Nubian, it came from Egyptian from a Nubian source, could be, from like a Nilo-Saharan source, could be added to these figures. For 10 items, the direction of borrowing is undetectable. No, not detectable, unsedatable. And the 12 remaining items were borrowed from Bija into Nilo-Saharan. Overall, it seems thus that the contact with Nilo-Saharan had very little impact on Bija, at least at the lexical level. So Nilo-Saharan had more borrowed words from the Cushitic language than Cushitic had borrowed words from the Nilo-Saharan language family. And that's just on the lexical level, you know what I'm saying? Other than other than other cultural connections. It's another I really want to get into this one right here. Now this is Julian Cooper. This is Julian Cooper right here. He talk about how the lower Nubia, the C group culture, spoke an Afro-Asiatic language, and possibly, live alongside, Nilo-Saharan. They say the toponymic strata in ancient Nubia into the Common Era. And the toponymic is like, place names. Let me go straight to the point. See right here, see the map. So we got Proto-Beja, in the east. And you got the C group languages, Wawet. Most of that region is covered in water right now because it's a lake. You got the pre-Meroitic, which would have been another dead Cushitic languages before these pre-Nilo-Nubians, overlapped these languages, like the later Kerma group and some of the groups coming in from Nabta Playa. Most of them would have been Nilo-Saharan populations who've been living alongside and borrowing from Proto-Cushitic populations for years. That's why even when you find cattle, not cattle, but goats and donkeys, what I'm saying, in these Nilotic regions. You might hear it say, read it. I'm gonna read a little bit right here where it say linguistic map of Sudan. And it say even where some of these languages may have be recorded in a onso in a onomastic data in various epigraph traditions, the sheer number of the languages in Sudan makes identifying etymologically a single language from toponyms difficult and often impossible. Furthermore, the difficulty of locating most place names in the ancient texts would certainly makes it difficult to create a base map from which one can measure linguistic change. This map, and when I just showed them, figure 1 is consistently changing from period to period. The change of toponyms often reflecting linguistic change, perhaps, but always contributable to migrating episodes in historical Nubia. The contemporary linguistic map of Sudan is dominated by 2 different linguistic phyla, Afroasiatic, Nilo-Saharan, and with a small number, Niger-Congo, and more isolated region of languages in the Kaddofian in southern Sudan. And the Kaddofian language I always talk about, the Niger-Congo file that's still in Sudan, western parts of Sudan. That's, that would be related to West African language. And they say most linguistics and archaeologists place the migration of Niger-Congo out of West Africa at some point in the first millennia. So those are not generally relevant to the discussion of the ancient Sudan contemporary to Pharaonic Egypt. The center of gravity of Nilo-Saharan languages is the west of the Nile Valley. So it is generally argued that all of these languages migrated south and east during antiquity, including the large subgrouping of South Sudan and East Africa known as Nilotic. This is particularly relevant to those discussions because languages such as Meroitic and Old Nubian must have arrived on the Nile Valley from the west at some point in antiquity. Such migrations might be detectable not only in the toponymic textual record, but also possible in the archaeological material. Other northeastern Sudanic and now Nilo-Saharan languages known contemporarily, but not in ancient documentation, such as Nara and Kanuma, now located in Atbara and Gash catchments east of the Nile, must also have presumably been spoken along the ancient Nile, Middle Nile. Although we are lacking any positive documentation of these languages in ancient texts, in antiquity, Afroasiatic languages in Sudan belong chiefly to phylum known as Cushitic, spoken on the eastern seaboard of Africa and from Sudan to Kenya. You know, the Cushitic language go all the way, the stretches all the way down there, from Sudan all the way down to Kenya with the Romo language and the southern Cushitic language, they go all the way down there, including the Ethiopian highlands. The longest traceable member of the Cushitic in Sudan is Beja, although other branches such as Aga and Highland East Cushitic are sometimes mentioned in discussions on the ancient peopling of Sudan. But some of them, they say some of those Cushitic languages was in the Sudanic regions even before they, traveled further south into the Horn, more late Heliocene or Neolithic periods. And they say these languages are meant to have undergone major geographic contractions due to pressure from other linguistic grouping, most notably Ethio-Semitic. Talking about the ones that's in the Eritrean the Ethiopian or Eritrean highland. And it's a Egyptian language unique amongst Afroasiatic phylum in having only one consuted language as spoken by a limited population in northern Sudan. The majority of Egyptian speakers were Egyptian colonists and were associated with administrative and religious personnel and importance, but the later indigenous Napatan dynasty seems to have also used a dialect of Egyptian as an elite dialect, possibly representing a case study of elite emulation into the event of Meroeg as a written language. We can go down. They're gonna read the whole damn article. Just want to show y'all this right here. We'll go C group. The A group. Where I say the A group is the ancestors of the C group. It's that same people. It's the later people. And right here it say the language of the C group speakers who occupy most of the lower Nubia. Because remember, I told you, Carl really, he said the C group people spoke a language that have been cousin to the Nara and Kanuma languages. I think they could have spoken a language like that, but I think their first language would have been Cushitic, a Cushitic language. But they probably did have a Nilo-Saharan or northeastern Sudanic population in the region, so where they could be a bilingual people to speak each other languages. He right here say the language of the C group speaker who occupy most of Lower Nubia, presumably identified of some Nubians likely in the Middle Kingdom, Egypt, has been the object of speculation, but not concerted study. Barines challenged a now criticized view that the C group people spoke the variety of Berber. Remember, I showed you earlier that the Berber was weaker. That's the one that Raleigh had, Clyde really had criticized. That of course it's not Berber. And they say here, but this thesis rests on somewhat sketchy and numerical insufficient lexical evidence. Nilo-Saharan languages have also been entertained based on migratory movement of Eastern Sudanic languages eastward across Sudan. Remember, that's Clyde Ridley information. Remember, he said that they spoke Nilo-Saharan language. That's kind of what Eric is kind of still going with in his book. But he should know this right here with Julian Cooper. This is kind of a new approach to it. So of course, Eric probably wouldn't have been aware of this yet. There's still a lot of speculative things going on, with that area, and especially with the Nasir Lake, covering up a lot of the artifacts in the regions. But Julian Cooper, he used the evidence based on toponymic place names of these different languages and linguistics. A lot of these place names would have Cushitic names and not Nilo-Saharan names in these lower Nubian regions. Even like Wawet being one of them, that's more of a Cushitic name. They say the Nilo-Saharan languages have also been entertained based on the macro migratory movement of Eastern Sudanic languages eastward across Sudan. Lower Nubian place names of the Middle and the New Kingdom most likely accord a Sigru speech, although there is no guarantee of linguistic homogeneity across this corpus despite a unified material culture in Lower Nubia. The input of the Pangrave people in the Nile Valley may have also contributed to changing this situation, although no place names can be specifically connected with this culture in Lower Nubia. You see Wawet, Lower Nubia, Wicked, possibly same name, explained by palatization of K. And they say Ibzet, Faraz, Ikin, Morgiza, Buin, Kuban, Inaba, where I say Inim, in different, all these different place names here. And they say a curiosity glance at this data suggests that the Sigru speakers cannot have spoken a Nilo-Saharan language. The presence of the foreignagal phonemes like H and whatever that little symbol is within this list obscure this corpus as belonging to the Afroasiatic microfamily. This pre-Meroitic Lower Nubia cannot have been occupied by speakers of an allied Nilo-Saharan, but must have been occupied by speakers of woolly different language. There are a number of phonetic difficulties present in the list, namely the old problem as to whether Egyptian alf represents a phonic or vowel in foreign words, as well as the realization of ayin of variability considered to represent D in Old Kingdom loans are more probable. A few curiosity etymological suggestions might be preferred for those toponyms. The names Em might be reflected in Beja, Mayum, low-lying land, presuming the loss of foreign gal in Beja at some point in antiquity. The cataract fortress of Pergasa or Aken might possibly be reflected in Beja Akan Spate Torrent. Those observations are not meant to identify this language, especially as Beja, but rather it is proposed to search in Beja lexical material for the closest common ancestor and hence dialect that possible of a Cushitic language existing in pre-Meroic Lower Nubia. These place names do not present any prefixing or suffixing pattern consistent with any one language. A final T uh, morpheme consistent amongst Cushitic languages is found in Theet, Wawet, and possibly Tisti. A disappearance of C group language is somewhat of a mystery. It is possible that with the successive phase of Egyptian Kushite and Meroitic sustaining in Lower Nubia, that this language became demographically and politically marginalized well before the arrival of now Nubian speakers. See, he don't dismiss both of them. He say it was both, but they the Nilo overlap. The Cushitic languages of the lower Nubian regions, especially when the Kerma region, the Kerma stretched out as an empire and went up north and took over Lower Nubia. So you had a lot of Cushitic languages in the area. Even right here say now Cushitic. Contemporary presence in Highland East Cushitic and Aga languages in nearby Ethiopia, as well as Beja, so-called North Cushitic in Eastern Sudan, makes it likely that these languages were present in the Middle Nile in antiquity, but mapping and identifying Cushitic toponyms have proved elusive. It has been argued that a few African loanwords such as ding, quote unquote, pygmy, could originate in Cushitic language, a place name written in Erib from the so-called supplementary text of New Kingdom Book of the Dead, seems to be related to a Cushitic root Rob or Rain, following an analyst of Takats. This possibility that the C group spoke a Cushitic language should be seriously entertained, although specific Cushitic lexical isoglosses are not apparent in the fragmented list of C group toponyms. The place names of Kiwa from the biography of Winnie might be represented in the Pan-Cushitic group Quer Valley basin. They're saying even though you do have an Eastern Cushitic, even though you had a northeastern Sudanic language, which is the Nilo-Saharan languages, you would also have Cushitic languages too, especially in those lower Nubian regions. Even in here, it say further south in the Nile Valley, with the northern border in the Bath Ajar, there was spear dominant of Eastern Sudanic speakers, certainly Meroitic speakers, but also likely other branch of Eastern Sudanic. In the Eastern Desert, and possibly part of the lower Nubia, the Bija languages was dominant. Let me show this too on here when I was showing A group. Here when they say linguistics, you heard it say linguistics affinities of A group culture is unknown, but according to Clyde Riley, it is unlikely to have spoken a language of Northeastern Sudanic branch of Nile Sahara. So he must have changed his stand. Beyond this, Riley states that the range of the possibilities remains wide, so it's still up for grabs. It includes a language belonging to another non-Northern Sudanic, East Sudanic branch of Nile Sahara. So he's saying it could be he's saying it could be another branch or another branch of Nile Saharan, or a Cushitic language or other Afroasiatic language. So he's saying it could be either one. You know what I'm saying? I think personally, it's a Cushitic. It would have been a Cushitic language. I think it would have been a Cushitic language, which had a lot of influence from Nilo-Saharan populations as well. Because you had to, because you still, like in the area, you still had the Sacred Kingship, which came from Nilotic populations or Sudanic populations or Eastern Sudanic populations. And then you had the Cushitic, the Cushitic population, even with Christopher Ehret book, he even mentioned how in the Proto-Cushitic period, how Nilo-Saharians or we call North Sudanic or Northeast Sudanic populations, they influenced each other's religion and cultural representations. Like they traded with each other, intermarried with each other. So of course, even if the lower Nubians or the A group, even if they had trade off with the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Naqada group, that Nilotic influence or culture still would have been traded off through Cushitic populations as well. And that's all I was trying to say, talk about. Let me see what the chat talking about. I think some did have, Astro said they didn't have MT markers. I think some of them did. Let me check that out. They didn't have much, but I think some of them did. West Africa. Yeah, it should be in here. Yeah, they did. They did have some. They had some. They did have some. Sub-Saharan MTD markers. Astro. But let me show you here. You talking about the Iberian Marusian. They didn't have a lot, but it had some. Cause even right here, look, this prehistoric West Africa. This is what this article is right here. See right here, where they're talking about the Tenerife Moroccans, who had radiocarbon data between 15,000 and 13,000 were found. 63.5% Natufian were also found 36 to 5.5 sub-Saharan African, example Hadzalite, which is also drawing out most of all the West African example group Yoruba Mindi. So they had like that, when they say Hadzalite, they're talking about like a proto-Nilotic type, the Kefians, you know what I'm saying? And the Yoruba type. These wouldn't be like the Yoruba that we know that, but they're like these proto Niger Kaddofian speakers that was up in the Sahara, you know what I'm saying, when the Sahara was green, what they called the Onanian cultures from these the spirit tips. Yeah, M1, M2. Well, hold on, watch it. I ain't done yet. They say, in addition to having similarities with the remnants of more basal sub-Saharan African lineages, basal West African lineages shared between Europe and Midi. So they would have already had the basal West African component, like the old Tyrian component, mixed in with the archaic stuff. And they say sub-Saharan African DNA of Tel Aviv people, Iberian Rouge culture may also best represent the modern West African Yoruba. Right here, 15,000 BPE, Niger Congo speakers, they talking about these same populations. Of course, they would have brought, some empty DNA with them. It say 15, this is same year, 15,000. 15,000 BP Niger Congo speakers might have migrated from the Sahelian region to West Africa and along the Senegal River to introduce L2A1 into North Africa, resulting into modern Mauritanian people and Berbers of Tunisia inheriting it. So 15,000 years ago, this LTA1 migrating up north, them people couldn't be nothing else but Iberian Maroons. That would have been Iberian Maroons with some slight because by then you would have had 15,000. You would have had the Afro-Asiatic speakers migrating up from the Red Sea Hills and mixing with these ancient North Africans by then too. So they would have had E3B markers too by then. But these populations wouldn't have been they would have been huge populations that would have been isolated, and this lineage would have survived amongst these North African populations and passed on for generations. This LTA1 lineage. And then too, you still would have also two North African populations with L3 markers. The mother of everybody else anyway. No, that's not what they had. That they migrated. You had some these Africans that migrated up north too, that stayed up there. Some drifted south too. Some of them was in Iberia and in Mali, but that wasn't that south. Like that was in northern Mali. That ain't that south. They were in southern south, and they was in deep south. That was like in Mali around the lake when it was green or whatever. And some of them people migrated. They met up in certain regions. The Onanian culture, like the humid phase. Let me show you. When we talk about the round head cave art, those were proto Niger Congo people. What they got it at? It's modern prehistoric West Africa. Yeah, round head right here. These round head people, these are West African, sub-Saharan African population. Round head or rock silly surrounding mountainous areas bear considered similar to traditional sub-Saharan African cultures. And these brown head or people are already in southern Nigeria, showing that these people in south central Sahara, a little farther northern than what the Sahel is today. Ethnography. Roundhead rock or Saheli surrounding mountains areas bear considerable similarities with traditional sub-Saharan African cultures as one of the primary aspects of sub-Saharan African cultures are considered value despite change in material economy mainstay value remains women roles and bear rare children means participant in ceremony and facilitate positive passing of time. The creators of the roundhead rock art possess dark-skinned ethnic groups who created roundhead art differ from the Tuareg Berbers. Traditional Afro Sub-Saharan African cultures bear notable likeness of rounded head rock art. For example, men predominantly partake in primary cemeteries of traditional Sub-Saharan African cultures, while women may neither obtain in-depth sacred understanding creating myths. Say mass or regularly seen with the round head art in Port African cultures. These are all in southern Nigeria. These round head rock head art, along with you know what I'm saying, along with other different people too. You had all types of different people in the Greens era. It wasn't just these dark people. There's all type of people. These people was in the South Central region. That's why I say they was in southern Nigeria at one point in time. They were traveling all type of ways. It wasn't just one people going one way. Some people went up north, got isolated. Some people went south, went isolated. Life ain't just a one way, this black and white thing. You got gray areas. Life don't work like that. It ain't just all just this whole basket of peanuts is green type shit. It ain't like that. Things go both ways. Astro 87. It ain't just one way. Things are complex. It ain't just no narrow view on things. It ain't just the Iberian Erosions went south. Some of these Onani and Keefe and people went up north. You found L2A10 already in Southern Europe. The L2 marker, you found it all in Southern Europe. You right here. Up to 11,000 years ago, sub-Saharan Western African bearer microhaplogroup L1B, 1A11, all these L's, L2AK, have migrated through North Africa into Europe, mostly into Southern Europe, for example, Iberia. So these people been migrating back and forth. I'm not saying it was majority, but some of these people migrated up there and intermingled with the local gene pool. And you gotta get out of this one like this one line type stuff. People, they don't work like that. Life is complicated. How about that? Life is hard. It ain't just this cartoon version or whatever you trying to come up with. People go back and forth. You might have a little bit of these Onanian or these proto Niger Congo speakers migrating, up north. Not as big numbers, but some of these people migrated up north and intermixed with the gene pool. It is what it is. But I'm gonna be out of here, y'all. This is a cool show. Let me get back at it again. Might do a show in the middle of the day tomorrow. All right, y'all. Peace out.